Are you looking to master the Cloud Architect interview or the Solutions Architect interview? If so, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Michael Gibbs and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Architects. And we're an organization that's dedicated towards building high-performance cloud computing and networking careers. Personally, I've been working in technology for over 25 years, and I've been helping others get their first tech job or get promoted in tech for over 2 decades. And my absolute favorite thing in the world is when one of my students calls me and says, "Guess what, Mike? I just got cloud hired." Today, we're going to talk about the interview presentation. And for a cloud architect, a solution architect, or an enterprise architect, it's very common to have an interview where you're forced to give a presentation. And you'll go through your normal cloud architect or solution architect interviews, but you're going to be asked to deliver a presentation. And the reason so many companies ask you to deliver a presentation as one of your interviews is these roles are really customer facing. And architecture roles are not engineering roles. A cloud architect is very different than a cloud engineer, for example, and that cloud architect is going to be customer facing so much. And presentation skills are a must, a critical skill for the cloud architect or the solutions architect or the enterprise architect. That critical. So much so that in many cases, the way they would normally check your technical competency with a technical interview, they're going to check your presentation competency with a presentation interview. So we're going to teach you how to deliver a stellar presentation for these cloud architect or solutions architect or enterprise architect interviews. So why is the company doing these interviews and what are they looking for? They're trying to see if you can become audience relevant, if you have got great presentation skills. They're trying to check your executive presence or your gravitas. They're checking your communication abilities. But you know what? A lot of times they use these interview presentations to check your emotional intelligence and conflict resolution skills. And we're going to give you some special tips in case that happens. But that's what the company is looking for. They want to see how good you can be when communicating with others. And for these architecture roles, because they're a cross between a technical role and a business executive role, you need to be both. So the first thing when it comes to mind in these presentations is, who is your audience? So what's going to happen is, prior to the interview, you're going to be told who's going to be in the audience. You're going to get their names and you're going to get their titles. Now, this is absolutely essential. See, as an architect, or anytime you're giving a presentation, you need to tailor that presentation to be relevant for the audience. So for example, if you notice the people that are interviewing you are a lot of executives, when you present the technology, make sure you show how that technology can positively impact the business. Because that's what an executive cares about technology. How can the technology transform the business? So when you're giving your presentation, if you notice there's a lot of executives, make your presentation executive relevant. Be less technical, more business, and be more transformational in your presentation. And that's how you're going to be relevant to an executive audience. Now, if your audience is tech people, your presentation is going to have to change. It's going to have to be much more technical because it's going to have to be relevant to the technical people. So when you're dealing with tech people, how does the tech work? That's typically the way you're going to be describing it. Or why is it the right tech? Or why is this the best solution? So when you're dealing with the executives, bias it towards the business impact. When you're dealing with the technical people, bias it towards the tech. And that way you're relevant to the audience at the time. Now, when you deliver a message to the CEO, it's got to be relevant to the CEO and things that the CEO care about, for example, about increasing shareholder value or raising revenue, cutting expenses, increasing profitability. So that would be CEO relevant. Likewise, if you were presenting to the CIO or Chief Information Officer, they're still going to be an executive, but they're going to have more concerned about the tech, the overall end-to-end solution and how the solution works, and that solution's impact on the business, of course. And when you're dealing with engineers, for example, they may need to know the nuts and bolts of how something works. So being relevant to your audience, critical in any environment, but they're going to test that on here. So just be sure that you deliver the knowledge to show them that you can be relevant to the executive and the tech people at the same time. Now, when you give a presentation, if you can have a logical flow to the presentation, it's going to be much better received. If the presentation is better received, you're going to get that cloud architect job or solution architect job or enterprise architect job. So let's talk about how to make the presentation better. While we can't go through an entire presentation course here, we can give you a few critical tips. First, tell the audience what you're going to tell them at the beginning. Then tell the audience, and then remind the audience of what you've told them. So that's a good flow. Tell the audience what you're going to tell them, then remind them of what you've told them. So that's the way you should typically present on a good presentation should flow. Now, if you have to describe technology as part of this presentation, a good rule of thumb is what is the technology, how does the technology work, and why do organizations use this tech, the benefits, the transformation that comes from the tech. So realistically speaking, that's a great way to describe technology. Now, if you're going to present a solution, for example, maybe you're a cloud architect or a solution architect, and in your solution architect interview, they want you to present an AWS solution, for example, or an Azure solution, or a hybrid cloud solution, or a multi-cloud solution. It doesn't matter. Start with the solution in your presentation, then add the substantiating evidence. Now, this is a major disconnect between the way executives present and like to be presented to and the way engineers tend to present. Engineers typically talk about the problem for 15 minutes or so and why the problem is so big, and then they show the solution that solves the problem. That's a typical engineering presentation. And it helps engineers truly understand the scope of the problem so they understand why it's the right solution. But business executives and business people don't think that way. We think, what is the solution? And then we think about why is it the right solution? So when you're presenting, make sure you start with the solution and then provide your substantiating evidence. So the exact opposite you would do in your traditional engineering presentation. But remember, these are architecture presentations, and architecture is design, and architecture is this hybrid business / tech. So I want you to be real prepared. Start with the solution and then provide your substantiating evidence. Don't start with the problem and bury the solution in the end. Now, the next part is your executive presence. What is executive presence? Well, there are times where someone walks in the room and you know they're in charge. You know they're in charge. And there's other times you see people and they just don't feel strong. Now, you can have two people that are the same size, and one person can feel big and larger than life, and the other person can feel small. So executive presence is about taking up space. It's about feeling and commanding the room. It's about people knowing that you're there. So when you are an architect, you're going to have to present to executives. And they all have a big presence, and they've been trained to have a big presence, and they expect you to have a big presence too. So how do you get more executive presence? Well, it's going to start with taking up space. Right now, do I look strong or capable? How about now? I'm bigger. Now, if I talk and I use my arms, I'm taking up more space. Now, let's just assume today is Monday, and on Monday I do my things. Very common way to speak. Today is Monday. On Monday, first I deliver a presentation, then I go to the gym, then after that I do X, Y, Z. Notice the difference. So to have more executive presence, make a point, pause, collect your thoughts, make a point, pause, vary your vocal tone, use gestures, and take up more space. When you do that on an interview, they're going to feel you as an architect, as a leader. So don't be the person when you're giving your presentation that talks real fast. When you're an executive or you're an architect and what you have to say is really important, people want to listen. So don't be in a hurry to get out. Take up space. Vary your vocal tone. Make a point. Pause. Collect your thoughts. Make a point. Point. Pause. Collect your thoughts. Do that. Make a point. Pause. Today is Friday. On Friday, I do X, Y, Z. Whatever. Just the point is just break it up and make it sound more interesting. So going back into this presence, going back into all this communication, what are we really talking about? If you look at the communication data from Harvard University, 55% of the communication is what we look like when we say something, and 38% is what we sound like, and 7% is the actual content. So when I talk about executive presence and we're doing this, it's affecting the way that you look and the way you sound, and it will affect the way the information is received. And you're going to need that when you deal with executives. And to be an architect and convince executives they need your technology, or even obtain the right information in the first place about their business to start design, you must have executive presence. Communication abilities. That's the other reason these organizations are doing this. They want to see, can you communicate? Now, if you are in tech and can communicate, you are what's called a unicorn. You are such a rare commodity that your career will be like a rocket ship. So develop your communication capabilities, because in tech it's very rare to find someone that's technically competent and has good communication skills. And if you've got both, you've got an amazing career. So companies are looking for people that can explain tech. So here's what I want you to be able to do and think about to win on these cloud architect interviews and these solution architect interviews. Be able to explain technology very simply. I'd like to say be able to explain it to a child. Now, the reason we're doing this is an executive is not going to be a technology professional. And as an architect, you're going to be expected to speak to the CEO. Now, the CEO holds the keys to the architecture being adopted or not adopted, bought versus not bought. But the CEO knows a lot about their business. They're the expert on their business, but they're going to know nothing about tech unless they're the CEO of a tech company. So when you're dealing with the CEO, you're going to have to make it clear in very simple terms what is the technology. Not because the CEO isn't incredibly intelligent. They are. That's why they're running the company. But you can only focus on one thing and be great at it. And they're great at running their company, so you're going to have to make your solution simple to understand. How do you do that? Get rid of every buzzword you've heard. There are more buzzwords in tech. Get rid of the buzzwords. Get rid of all the jargon and get rid of marketing speak. A server is a server. It doesn't need the name Elastic Compute Cloud. It doesn't need the name Compute Engine. It's a server. And if you call it a server to the CEO, they get it. If you call it a virtual machine, probably still okay, or a virtual server, still fine. But once you start using marketing terms, it confuses people. So change your words, call things what they are, strip out all the marketing speak, strip out all the jargon, be clear, be straight to the point. Companies obviously want to build a brand, and I have nothing against companies building a brand. But when you're dealing with an executive and technology is not their strength, running their business is their strength, or anybody in general, communicate in plain, simple terms. The customers will love you, and you will do better. So we're talking about how to increase your chances of getting hired on these cloud architect interviews or solution architect interviews. Plain, simple language. If there are multiple people in the room, make sure you make eye contact with everyone. If it's one person, you're making eye contact with the person in front of you. But if there are multiple people in the room, make eye contact with everyone. So make sure you make a point of looking in one direction, make eye contact, eye contact, eye contact, make eye contact. Now, I don't want you to be like a robot where you consistently go in these directions. Just make eye contact with everyone. Favor the leader. Maybe give 40% of your time to the leader, but make eye contact with everyone. Now, if there's just one person in the room, figure out if the person's auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. If someone says, I see what you mean, they're visual. Communicate to them in visual terms. If they're auditory, they say things like, I hear what you're saying. Communicate to them in sound terms. And if they say things like, I feel you, they're probably kinesthetic. Communicate to them in kinesthetic terms. So if someone says, I see what you mean, say, picture this to them to describe things. If someone says, I hear you, you can say things like, how does this sound to you? If someone says, I feel you, and you know they're kinesthetic, imagine how this will make you feel. So use terms that are going to be relevant to the person. Now, if you've got one person, obviously make it their communication style. But if you've got multiple people in the room, make sure you use a combination of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic communication styles to make sure that you're there. Now, when you're on these presentation interviews and you're going to give your presentations, people are going to ask you questions. This is good. Now, here's your secret weapon. The studies on exercising influence and with regards to customer satisfaction with communication, if someone asks you a question and you repeat their question back to them, make sure that it's the right question and then answer it, statistically speaking, people are very impressed. They did this study where they took waiters and waitresses and people that serve food, and they had the people either take the orders or repeat back, okay, if I understand this correctly, you would like a hamburger cooked medium well with a whole wheat bun with no fries substituted with broccoli. They found that when the servers did this, the waiters and waitresses, they got much bigger tips because customer satisfaction went up. So guess what? It's your job interview. We want the people to like you more. So if they ask you a question, reframe the question back to them prior to answering. Make sure it's the right question you're answering. Imagine answering the wrong question and how much better it'll be by answering it the right way anyway. Presentation gotchas. Sometimes, and it's happened to me, organizations are going to try and check your emotional intelligence or your conflict resolution skills. I want you to be prepared for this, so if it happens, you are not stressed. Common ways that companies will do this on your cloud architect interview or your solution architect interview as as follows. They will ask you a mean question. And if someone asks you a mean question, smile and be polite and give a polite solution. Show no negative emotion. Now, sometimes you could be presenting and they will start an argument amongst each others. Again, to see if you can take a step back, take a deep breath, raise the energy in the room, stop the altercation, especially a fake altercation, make everybody happy. Again, it shows really great customer service and conflict resolution skills. Whatever you do, just be positive. I'll even tell you, I was in an interview with a major tech company many years ago and I worked for them for a long time, loved it. When I gave my presentation, they started an argument. And as soon as I solved the argument, they said, interview's over, we just wanted to see how you would deal with pressure. And you did great, and I was hired immediately after. So we talked about some of the gotchas as well. Now remember that even though this is a presentation, it's still an interview. So when you get home and you get to your computer, send a thank you note for everyone that interviewed you. Thank them for their time. Thank them for spending time with you, because these are busy people. Use this thank you note as one last chance to remind them of how you can help this organization. What did we discuss today? We discussed why organizations require presentations for so many of the cloud architect, solution architect, and enterprise architect jobs. We discussed being relevant to your audience. We gave you some presentation skills tips. We talked about developing executive presence, at least enough to improve your interview. We talked about ways to improve your communication abilities for these interviews, and we gave you some interview tips. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video on the cloud architect interview or the solution architect interview or the enterprise architect interview, the types of interviews where you deliver presentations. This is Michael Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Architects, and it's an honor to speak to you here today. I look forward to seeing you in another video. Take care. It was so nice having you join us for this video today. Let me tell you about some free services we do for the cloud community. Once per week, we actually have a free question and answer session live on YouTube, where you can come and ask us any questions you want about building your career related to cloud computing or networking, and we'll answer them in real time for you because we want to get you to your goals. Several more times per week, we have guests from industry experts that I've known for decades that are movers and shakers that have changed the world, that can give you information so you can build the best career. I invite them periodically. They are on my show. If there's a chance to do some free training on our channel, we'll do it live because we want you all to have the best skills for the best career. So please subscribe and hit the bell. I look forward to seeing you, and I look forward to assisting you in your technology career. Thank you so much. This is Michael Gibbs from Go Cloud Architects.